Protesters gather at Iranian prison in attempt to stop imminent executions.
Here's a summary of the article.
Protesters gathered outside a prison near the Iranian capital on Sunday night in an attempt to prevent the rumored imminent execution of two young detainees found guilty of running over a police officer in a car during protests in November. Some warnings of imminent executions have proved false, possibly because protests around specific prisoners have unnerved the authorities. Iranian ambassadors in Europe are still being summoned over the execution of two men on Saturday, and Iran is now having to weigh up whether to ignore the international condemnation over the lack of due process, including prisoners being denied access to lawyers of their choice. The repression, which is seen by the Iranian authorities as an appropriate response to injuries inflicted on security officers during the protests, is stifling any chances of the talks of a renewed nuclear deal, pushing part of the Iranian regime to look for closer relations with Russia as an alternative to the West. Trudeau said the Tehran regime did not represent its people, a position that takes him closer to expelling Iranian diplomats from Canada, one of the key demands of the protesters in the large and increasingly unified Iranian diaspora. The Canadian Foreign Minister, Melanie Joly, also denounced the executions, saying, "2 more lives lost to senseless executions from the Iranian regime." Calling on Iran to put an end to such brutal and inhumane sentences, Joly expressed solidarity with Iranians who have a right to their human rights. Iranian judicial news agencies reported that Salah Mirashemi, a karate champion, had been sentenced to death, along with 2 others.
This post received a score of 12,000, with an upvote ratio of 98%. Here are the top comments in response to this article.
Supposedly the protests were successful, at least for the moment.
It was a combination of protesters surrounding the prison and Western politicians scrambling last night to threaten the regime with more sanctions and the closing of their embassies if they went ahead with it. People were tweeting and emailing their representatives. Just goes to show you can do something even if the situation seems hopeless.
This is amazing to read. I hope they reevaluate this whole situation. I'm not super hopeful, but this obviously gives even the smallest glimmer of it.
Repressive governments pay more attention to what happens outside their borders than they like to let on.
Good to know. I no longer support the Iran nuclear deal and now want their government completely ousted and put on trial. What they've done to their people is horrifying.
You could oust the existing government and have a non-proliferation deal with the next batch. No need to pick one.
I'm quite impressed with the Iranian people. It's a shame we can't seem to do anything real to help them.
It sucks, but any open foreign aid for the protesters will be spun by the Ayatollahs as proof the West is doing a regime change again to mobilize their diehard supporters.
Anytime an American even so much as speaks up about the topic, it's labeled as a Kia conspiracy plot.
Even last night, Khamenei was tweeting about this being the CIA's fault. Some people think protests in the US don't do anything for the people in Iran, or that writing to your politicians won't do anything. First, it gives them hope that people outside Iran support them. Iranians need people in the rest of the world to keep caring. Keep protesting with our diaspora, keep writing letters to political people asking what they will do to help Iranians in the streets demanding human rights, keep talking about it on Reddit, and keep posting about it on other social media.
I'm curious, do you think the protesters have a chance of winning without putting heads on spikes? Here's hoping the leadership of your country gives up and eats a bullet before any more humans have to die.
Like without putting the heads of our leaders on spikes? I don't think that would happen, but I'm sure if a revolution is successful, 1. Some high-level leaders, SEP officers are going to get killed in the process. 2. People will want trials to get some justice from the leaders that have brutalized us, and my guess is hanging would be a likely punishment for many of them. Generally speaking, I'm against capital punishment, except for crimes against human rights. And our leaders are very much criminal in that regards.
This video was automatically created by Reddit to speech. The article and comments in this video were selected from Reddit according to their upvotes, and any paraphrasing was performed by smmry.com, without any human intervention.